He built it looked like a Sanger flat bottom boat, probably about maybe 18, 20 inches long, all out of balsa wood, and had it all custom painted. I remember it was all greens and fades and blends, and beautiful, beautiful boat.
Chip Foose didn't just leave Boyd Coddington's shop. He walked away from the man who had helped shape his career, and for nearly 25 years, nobody outside their inner circle knew exactly why. Fans filled the silence with theories about money, betrayal, stolen credit, and a confrontation that supposedly changed everything. Then Foose finally opened up, and the story looked very different from the rumors that had followed them for years. So what actually happened between Chip and Boyd? And why did it take so long to tell? Join us as we uncover the truth. The kid, who was already a pro at 12. Chip Foose grew up inside a body shop. His dad, Sam Foose, ran a place called Project Design, and by the time Chip was 12, he already had 5 years of real hands-on experience under his belt. Most kids that age are drawing cars in a notebook. Foose was already building them. Born October 13, 1963, in Santa Barbara, he met designer Alex Tremulous, the guy behind the famous Tucker 48, when he was just 7 years old. Alex, along with people at Ford, pushed the kid to take design seriously and pointed him toward Art Center College of Design. He enrolled there in 1982, the same school that trained generations of car designers before him. He dropped out 2 years in, broke, unable to afford tuition. So he did what a lot of talented people do when money runs out. He got a job, 4 years at Clinet Coachworks, building custom luxury cars, then back to Art Center to finish the degree he'd walked away from. He graduated in 1990. That's the part people forget when they picture Chip Foose as some overnight TV sensation. He wasn't. He clawed his way through design school twice, working the whole time, before he ever touched a car that made him famous. Boyd Coddington's own start was rougher still. Born in Rupert, Idaho in 1944 and raised on a dairy farm, he got his first car, a beat-up 1931 Chevy truck, at 13 in a trade. He handed over his shotgun to a neighbor because he wasn't interested in hunting and wanted wheels instead. He went through machinist trade school, then moved to California in the late 1960s, building hot rods by day and working the night shift as a machinist at Disneyland just to pay rent. In 1977, he opened his own shop, Hot Rods by Boyd, first in Stanton and later in Cypress. His first big customer, a guy named Vern Luce, brought him a 33 coupe that went on to win the Al Slonaker Award at the 1981 Oakland Roadster Show. That win put Boyd's name on the map. Working alongside a machinist named John Butera, he pioneered custom aluminum billet wheels, a look nobody else in the industry was doing yet. By 1988, that idea had become a full-fledged company, Boyd's Wheels, Inc. Two very different paths, one obsessed with cars from childhood poverty, the other clawing through design school on borrowed time, eventually crossed. After graduating, Foose split his time between Sterenberger Design and Boyd, working full-time at Sterenberger Design and part-time at Boyd. He was just one more talented kid on Boyd's payroll, doing design work most customers never saw his name attached to. Nobody at that point had any reason to think this relationship would end in a decades-long silence. It looked like a mentorship. For a while, it basically was. Let's check that out. The job Boyd wouldn't let him turn down. In 1993, Chip Foose got an offer most designers would kill for, a full-time job with J. Mays at Ford, one of the biggest names in the entire auto industry. He resigned from Sterenberger. He was ready to go work in Detroit, but Boyd Coddington talked him out of it. Instead of Ford, Chip Foose went full-time for Boyd. He rose fast, eventually becoming president of Coddington's company, Hot Rods by Boyd. Boyd handed him the keys to the whole operation, and Foose delivered. He designed the Boydster and Boydster II, two of the most talked-about custom cars of the era. He designed the Roadster, the Sportstar, and the Boyd Air. These were the cars that built Boyd Coddington's reputation as a legend of the hot rod world, all coming out of one guy's sketchbook while somebody else's name sat on the door. Not every famous car with Boyd's name on it actually came out of Chip's pen. Cadzilla, the customized 1949 Cadillac Boyd's shop, built for ZZ Top's Billy Gibbons in 1989, was actually conceived and designed by Jack Chisenhall and Larry Erickson, another talented designer who passed through Boyd's shop early on and later became chief designer for the Mustang and Thunderbird at Ford. Unlike Foose, Erickson has spoken warmly about his time there, crediting the Cadzilla project directly with launching his own career. And Foose wasn't the only future star Boyd trained and eventually lost to a rival show either. Jesse James, later the face of Monster Garage and West Coast Choppers, also worked in Boyd's shop as a young guy learning the trade, before building his own competing empire on a different network entirely. In 1997, Boyd and Foose were actually inducted into the Hot Rod Hall of Fame together, Boyd as the shop owner, Foose officially listed as his chief designer, the youngest inductee in the Hall's history at the time. It's one of the only moments on record where the industry put both names side by side in equal recognition. It didn't last. Everywhere else, in magazines, in press releases, on the cars themselves, the name that mattered was Boyd's. For 8 years, that arrangement held. Foose built. Boyd got famous. It worked, right up until the money ran out. What happened afterward? The bankruptcy that broke it. Boyd Coddington didn't just build cars. He also built a wheel company, Boyd's Wheels, and took it public. For a while, it printed money. Then the Asian financial markets tanked in the late 1990s, demand collapsed, and Boyd's Wheels went down with it. The whole operation filed for bankruptcy in 1998. Small hot rod shops around the country, the mom-and-pop places that had ordered wheels and never got paid back, ended up eating a combined total that some in the industry put at over $5 million in losses. It wasn't a quiet, dignified collapse. It was the kind of bankruptcy people in the industry still bring up decades later. Foose was standing right in the middle of it, president of a company that had just gone under. He had a wife, Lynn, and a family to feed. So he left. He and Lynn started their own shop, Foose Design, right there in 1998, out of pure necessity as much as ambition. Exactly why Foose left, beyond the bankruptcy itself, has never had one single confirmed answer. One rumor that circulated for years on old hot rod forums claims Boyd was caught overcharging clients for parts they never actually received, essentially skimming money, and that the fallout from that is what really pushed Foose out. Nobody involved has ever confirmed that story on the record, and it's the kind of secondhand claim that gets repeated so often in enthusiast circles that people start treating it as fact without any real proof. What's confirmed is simpler and less dramatic. The company went bankrupt. Foose was its president, and he walked away to start over on his own. This is the part where the story could have just ended quietly. Talented designer leaves failing company, starts his own thing, and everybody moves on. Except Foose Design didn't just survive. It exploded. Foose won the Riddler Award 4 times, the top prize in custom car show competition, and America's Most Beautiful Roadster 7 times over. His redesign of a 2002 Ford Thunderbird, nicknamed the Speedbird, became a full TLC documentary in 2003, and that documentary is the direct reason Discovery came calling to give him his own show. Overhaulin' premiered on TLC in April 2004, built around a format where Foose and his crew would secretly rebuild someone's beloved car overnight, while the unsuspecting owner thought it had been stolen. The show itself had almost as many ups and downs as Foose's relationship with Boyd, and off-camera it churned through hosts almost as fast as Boyd's shop churned through employees. Courtney Hanson co-hosted the first season before leaving in 2005, replaced by producer Bud Brutzman's own wife, Adrienne Janik. Jesse Combs, one of the early build team mechanics, later stepped into a co-hosting role of her own, before Ariane Celeste took over for the final stretch. Built around a simple trick, convincing an unsuspecting car owner their beloved vehicle had been stolen, then secretly rebuilding it overnight, while undercover actors played fake police officers to sell the ruse. Overhaulin' became known for celebrity cameos almost as much as the builds themselves. Johnny Depp once helped pull off the prank on his own fiancée, Amber Heard, staging a fake third theft of her 1967 Mustang, while Foose and co-host Chris Jacobs posed as starstruck cops, taking selfies to stall her. Other episodes rebuilt cars for people like Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell, the subject of Lone Survivor. Away from the show, Foose's design work reached even further, into Pixar's Cars franchise, where John Lasseter brought him in to contribute paint schemes and consult on the sequel, and back into his childhood roots, designing and building cars for his father's work on films like Blade Runner, RoboCop, and Gone in 60 Seconds. The show ran 5 seasons before getting canceled in 2008. Foose kept working anyway, partnering with a company called Unique Performance and showing custom builds at SEMA. And in 2007, he painted a custom scheme for NASCAR driver Jeff Gordon. Overhaulin' came back from the dead in 2012 on Velocity, ran 4 more seasons, and closed that run in 2015, with Foose winning an unprecedented 4th Riddler Award for a car called The Imposter, a 1965 Impala built on a Corvette Z06 platform. The show returned again in 2019 on Motor Trend. In 2016, Foose marked 30 years in the business with a career retrospective at the Peterson Automotive Museum and an induction into the SEMA Hall of Fame. None of that came without its own fights over credit, either. Describing his personal 1956 Ford F-100, the truck that appeared throughout Overhaulin', Foose later said the show's own producer, Bud Brutzman, took the truck from his shop, along with his original drawings, copied them, and handed the truck back. It's almost the same complaint Foose had spent years not saying out loud about Boyd. Somebody else profiting off his exact designs. This time, Foose said it plainly, in an on-record interview, without hesitation. Away from the cameras, Foose kept a smaller, quieter cause close to him. His younger sister, Amy, died of progeria, a rare, rapid aging disease, at just 16. Foose still serves as vice chairman of the California chapter of the Progeria Research Foundation, showing up for charity builds and fundraisers long after the TV cameras moved on. By any measure, Foose didn't just survive leaving Boyd's shop. He built something bigger than it. But bigger didn't mean the old tension actually went away. If anything, it was about to become much more public. 2 rival shows, 1 angry blow-up. A few years after Foose design took off, both men ended up on national television, running rival shops on the same network family at the same time. By the mid-2000s, Foose had Overhaulin'. Coddington had American Hot Rod, which ran from January 2004 to September 2007 across 5 seasons and 76 episodes, out of Boyd's shop in La Habra, California. Two former partners, once mentor and protege, now competing head-to-head for the same audience, the same sponsors, and increasingly, the same employees. American Hot Rod became infamous for exactly this kind of tension. The show followed builds like the Alumitub, a 61 Impala bubble top, a 63 Corvette Stingray, a 42 Woody, even a pink 1957 Cadillac built as an Elvis tribute car. But the storyline fans actually talked about was the staff. The show had a brutal turnover rate, and Foose's name kept showing up as the reason. A machinist named Mike Curtis got fired outright for moonlighting, designing wheels for, in the show's own words, competitor, ex-employee, and nemesis Chip Foose. A fabricator named Scott Parker left trying to go out on his own and ended up working for Foose anyway. And body shop supervisor Charlie Hutton left mid-build on the 42 Woody specifically to go work for Foose, a defection the cameras caught in real time. Boyd's reaction wasn't subtle. He was furious on camera, in front of a national audience, watching his own guy walk out the door toward his old designer-turned-rival. It got personal in a way that went beyond business. Boyd's son, Chris Coddington, worked in the shop's custom wheel sales department, appearing throughout the show's run right up until the wheel division itself got sold off to American Racing during Season 4. Even with his own last name on the building, he didn't build a permanent place for himself there. If your own kid can't stick around under your roof, that tells you something about what working there had actually become by that point. Longtime fans of both shows spent years arguing online about who actually deserved credit for the golden era of Boyd's most famous builds. A lot of that argument traced back to one simple, uncomfortable fact. The designer had left, started competing, and was now visibly, publicly better at running a calm, functional shop than the man he used to work for. Boyd never really got the chance to make peace with any of it in public. His last few years weren't easy ones. In April 2005, he pleaded guilty to a fraud charge unrelated to Foose entirely, registering fully custom, hand-built cars as antique automobiles to dodge emissions rules and tax liabilities, a scheme California officials described as a ship of Theseus fraud. So many parts had been swapped out that the cars legally weren't the same vehicles anymore. It was a misdemeanor, not a career-ending scandal, but it added another layer of legal trouble to a name already juggling a bankruptcy and a very public falling out with his old chief designer. His health went downhill fast after that. He was hospitalized on December 31st, 2007, discharged briefly, then readmitted just days later to a hospital in Whittier, California. He died there on February the 27th, 2008, at 63, following complications from surgery. The shop that carried his name closed for good that June. And for a long, long time after that, Chip Foose basically didn't talk about it. That silence held for almost 25 years. Then, finally, it broke. 15 years of almost nothing. Here's what's strange about this whole story. Foose never trashed Boyd publicly. He never went on some big tell-all press tour after Boyd's death to settle old scores. He just went quiet on the subject. Interviewers would ask, and he'd give the short, polite version. Boyd gave him his start. He learned a lot. He moved on. That's about as far as it usually went. Meanwhile, Boyd's own son kept the family name alive. Boyd Coddington Jr. had worked alongside his father in the business, helping reorganize Boyd's wheels after the 1998 bankruptcy under his own name before later moving on to run Weld Wheels for a stretch. Eventually, he came back around to preserving his father's legacy directly, running Hot Rods by Boyd today as a tribute brand built on his father's old designs and reputation, rather than a working custom shop competing for new clients. For years, that meant carrying forward a story with only one side fully on the record. Boyd's side, told through his son, his old builds, and the show that made him famous. In August 2023, Boyd Coddington Jr. sat down with Chip Foose for episode 70 of the Hot Rods by Boyd Podcast. Boyd Jr. opened the episode by saying flat out that it had been almost 25 years since the two of them had actually sat down together and talked. Not since Foose left the company. Not since the bankruptcy. Not since the rival TV shows. 25 years. Foose used that conversation to finally fill in the blanks about the 8 years he spent working for Boyd Sr., the years that built his entire career, and, in many ways, also bred the frustration that eventually pushed him out the door. He talked about how working for Boyd set the trajectory of his career as a designer. He didn't pretend those years weren't formative. He also didn't pretend they were simple. That podcast cracked something open. A few years later, other interviewers started getting Foose to open up further, digging into the same territory from new angles. One podcast episode carried the blunt title, "Ex-Overhaulin' Star Breaks Silence: The Truth About Boyd Coddington and Car Design." What's clear from everything Foose has said since is this: there was never one single dramatic blow-up. Just 8 years of a talented designer building someone else's legend. A bankruptcy that forced his hand. 2 competing TV shows that turned old tension into public entertainment. And then, over 2 decades of near silence, while both men, and eventually just one of them, tried to figure out how to talk about it. Boyd Coddington never got to hear Foose's full version. He died before the silence broke. But his son did. And in a strange way, that conversation in 2023 gave both families something closer to an ending than any bitter TV feud ever could have. So after nearly 25 years of silence, do you think Chip Foose finally told the real story about what happened with Boyd Coddington? And knowing how their relationship ended, do you think they could have ever made peace if Boyd had lived longer? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.